Hello everyone, happy Sunday. In this video today I'm just winding my watch because it's I wear my other watch on a Sunday. It's just one of those little kind of signals to myself that helps me know it's another day, because sometimes when you're self-employed the days kind of roll into one, so you have to create that sense of occasion. Nice to see you all. Today I'm going to be telling my story. I thought it could be cool to just take a little moment to tell you guys a little bit about me. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you're having a good Sunday. And today I'm drinking some Bengal spice tea. That's one of my favorite teas. It's one of my daughter's favorite teas. And my mum used to give me it when I was a little boy. And so there's a kind of nostalgic taste that it's delicious. I'm just letting my club members know I'm live now. If you're not already in my club, definitely come and join. That's where all my exclusive content library is, and I do lives once a month with requests from the club, etc. If you want to join, comment club. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click the link in the top comment. So yeah, I am a 35-year-old Scottish songwriter, although that's not where my journey began. I've been making music for about 15 years now, and many of you guys may have found me on the internet through short-form content. I've really spent the last 3 years pushing short-form content and learning the art of short-form content, creating a lot of videos. So it's been the kind of 20% that's created 80% of my results, because I was making music for a long time before anyone discovered me. But I thought I'd go back to the start and just tell you who I am, and you can spend a little bit of time with me and get to know me if you want. And cheers, happy Sunday. So my journey began, I was born in 1990 in Portobello, which is a little seaside town just outside of Edinburgh, about 4 miles outside of Edinburgh. And it's now very posh, but when I grew up there, it wasn't, because Scotland didn't used to have cheap flight. So cheap flight came in. I'm just going to plug the computer in because I want to make sure that it's got enough charge so I'm not overthinking it. Cheap flight came into Scotland, and suddenly the holiday destinations in Scotland, like the seaside places, which is, Portobello is like a seaside town, right? And there, I remember when I grew up there was still donkey rides, there was still kind of the ghost, right? The imprint of its previous glory as a kind of seaside town. A wee bit like Blackpool. If you are from the UK, you'll know what that means. And it kind of became, after that, a shadow of its former self. So when I grew up there, there was really two kinds of folk that lived there. There was skint working class people and skint middle class people, like hippies that had no money, that moved there because they could afford to buy a house there. So my mum, she was one of those hippies, right? And I'm one of 8. There was 8 of us living in a 2-bed flat in Portobello. And the house that I grew up in was kind of like a drop-in centre for the community. There was a lot of people, to be honest, with mental health difficulties that came and hung out there. So I grew up learning how to kind of listen to the undercurrents of what people were saying, or listen to the kind of what's between the lines on what people were saying. And I think in many ways that's sort of where I learned how to read people. And also probably a little bit of what made me sensitive. And I'm sensitive as a producer. I'm sensitive as a musician. And by sensitive, I don't mean I'm not tough, because I am. I just mean I can read things. I've got a good read on situations and people because of that, and I'm intuitive because of that. So it really taught me a lot about being intuitive and learning and listening and learning from people from all different kinds of walks of life. I was also experiencing some abuse in my childhood as well. And at the age of 15, I left home and I went and lived in an outdoor activities center, which I was working in the kitchens and helping them clean the place, and just had to get out of the city because at the age of 15, one of my best friends died falling from a roof. And I'd become quite badly addicted to uppers at this point in time, which I think, looking back, was probably a way for me to kind of self-medicate myself from ADHD, which I was later diagnosed with. Made a lot of sense. Anyone who's got ADHD will know that it's not like, oh, suddenly these symptoms are there. They're always there, and and then it helps you sort of make sense of it, right? But anyway, throughout this time, I was kind of making beats and learning how to rap, and I was really into hip-hop. I was really into Nas. I was really into a Tribe Called Quest. I was really into a lot of UK hip-hop as well. People like Jest, Brain Tax, lots of amazing artists from the UK that I thought of as like mega grown up. Looking back, probably they were like 20 years old at the time. I was only 15 at the time. And around this time, my friend, I made some friends in hip hop, and my friend, who's called Mad Hat, had a setup at his house. He had a microphone and he had a recording setup. So I remember one day he said, just stay in the house if you want, and he wrote out like instructions on how to use this program. And the program was called Fruity Loops. And I just locked myself in a room for a day. And when he came back, he went away working, he came back, and I said, look, I made this song, right? And so when I was 16 years old, I recorded my first song. So that's 19 years ago, amazingly. And it was a hip-hop song. And, there was a couple failed attempts at moving out, really. And my dad lived in the town with his wife, Frida. So I went and stayed with them for a little bit. And I was working in construction and stayed with them for a while, moved back out again. Stayed in flats with mates, stuff like that. I was working on construction sites. And then at the age of 19, I entered a competition. And I'd been wanting to be a carpenter. I really had my sights set on potentially becoming a carpenter. And on the same day that I got offered finally a carpentry apprenticeship, which I remember at the time I thought, I'm quite old now because I'm 19, right? Which is crazy, because when you're 19, you're a baby. But it was the oldest I'd been, so I felt old at that point in time. And so I decided to go into this competition. I got offered to go into this competition that I'd entered. I'd kind of forgotten that I'd entered it, but I'd put CDs in. And someone got back to me and said, come into the competition and try it out. And it was literally the same day I got offered a carpentry apprenticeship. And so I decided to go on the radio. I went to this competition and I didn't know what I was doing. I did not know what I was doing. I remember just drinking because I was nervous city boy. All these guys were quite seasoned performers. They really knew what they were doing. And I had some experience in this kind of the hip-hop scene, but nothing in the sort of gigging and folk world at all, right? So anyway, I got to the finals and I made a lot of good connections. I learned a lot. I was definitely putting on the wheels as I drove, and I took time off of the building site to kind of go and do this competition and do a tour and made an album, and that was all cool. But ultimately, I went back to the construction site, right? And I worked another couple of years until my 20th birthday. I remember I was out in the pub with my mum and a bunch of family. And I just decided, I said to my mum, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it with the music. I'm just going to give it a really good go. I'll see what happens, right? I just want to try it. So I walked off the construction site, age 20, and I started to seek opportunity. And what I mean by that is I went busking, I met people, I'd go to the pubs, and I was just singing these songs that I'd made up and just trying to meet people, trying to do stuff, trying to, put myself around the opportunities that potentially could lead to more opportunities, right? And I started to do a regular session at a place called the Captain's Bar in Edinburgh. I met some people there. And then a couple guys who had been in the competition with me a couple years before started a band called Rura. And they were like, we need a singer, because they were a instrumental group, right? They were playing like pipes and fiddles and tunes in Scotland, so they didn't have songs inside the band. So they wanted to have songs, and they asked me. And I hadn't made a record of my own by this point, but I definitely was starting to collect some songs, collect some ideas. So I agreed, and I joined them, and we started to tour all over the world. I'm 20 years old at this point in time. We're touring all over the world, and around this time, my dad is complaining of jaw pain, right? I remember he's complaining, he's like, my jaw's really hurting. He goes to the dentist, and I just remember I was gigging a lot, and it turns out it's cancer, right? So I'm away doing all these gigs, and suddenly my dad gets really sick. He gets cancer, and my life becomes like being out in the world, being in Italy, Switzerland, Europe, all over Scotland and the UK as well, doing gigs half the time, but then the other half of the time I'm coming home and my dad is not well, and unfortunately his cancer progressed incredibly quickly, and over the course of a year he got so sick that he ultimately died in 2012. And I was kind of just finding my feet in terms of what I was doing and my craft and making music and winning some awards and getting a lot of cool opportunities. I made my first album in 2012 in the same year with an amazing producer called John Wood, who'd worked with Nick Drake, he'd worked with John Martin and Pink Floyd and all these amazing people. But suddenly I'm finding myself going through grief and becoming known in Scotland, becoming more popular. And I didn't have any big goals for my first solo album because I was in Rura and I thought, this is my job. I tour and I play with this band. And I just thought, I'll make my own album because I want to, right? Just because I had these songs in me, I had this stuff in me, and I just wanted to do it. So I made my first album in 2012, and it got picked up for some awards. It got picked up by a lot of radio stations. It did really well in Scotland. And so it was like riding this wave suddenly of grief, but also riding this wave of success simultaneously. It was a very colourful, rich time and a very emotional time. And at the same time, one of my best friends, another best friend who was only 24, got cancer and died as well. So I was really I didn't really know what was going on. And what ultimately happened was, it was like I started to have this thing where I could feel something in my mouth, and I started to feel panicky all the time. And I didn't know what it was. I kept thinking, maybe I'm sick or something. I mean, my dad's cancer had been in his mouth, right? So I think I was just not very well, and I started to kind of experience what I would later discover was actually PTSD connected to some stuff that happened in my childhood and my dad's death, and some other things that had happened in my adult life, some violent events. And so I just started to feel really panicked all the time, and yet the success was building, and bigger rooms, bigger tours, more stuff, more money, like I'd never had money in my life. So everything, it was like the volume on everything just got turned up to the max, and I didn't know what to do. And so I asked my brother, Colin, as I say, I'm one of 8 kids, right? And my big brother, Colin, is someone who managed to kind of really live a life that I wanted to emulate, as in he had a good family, he had money, he had success, he'd figured life out. So I asked him, okay, Colin, what did you do? And he said to me, well, I did this thing called cognitive behavioral therapy, right? And I said, what's that? He said, it's a kind of therapy, So I started to research about cognitive behavioral therapy, and it turned out there was a therapist lived, relatively near me. So I booked a session with her, but I was just drinking. So, I was drinking like 7 or 8 pints every night at this point. I was just trying to get out of this pain I was in. I couldn't see past it, But I booked a session with my therapist, and I went, and she said to me, you need to not drink 8 pints and then come back when you're not doing that. And I just left again. I just did another 6 months of touring and drinking and down a hole. I'm like 22 at this point in time, 23. And eventually I get together and I go back to see her. And by this point I've gained a lot of weight. I was like 17 stone. I don't know what that is in pounds. A lot anyway. I was severely overweight. And I just had reached enough. I remember going to Scotmed, which is like the shop near my house, and I bought 12 cans, and I bought this fish supper, and I was looking at this fish supper on top of this big box of beer, and I just thought, this is like, I'm trapped, this is going to kill me. I can't do this anymore. And I just felt so underneath all of the pain of my life up till that point that I was like, I'm going to die if I keep doing this, So I started to go to therapy. I kind of got my life together. I lost fat. I got invited on some more tours with some other quite high level people. Like I did a tour with an amazing guy called John McCusker, who taught me a lot about music and touring and life. And I did a tour with an amazing guy called Martin Green, and we worked with people out of Portishead and people out of Mogwai and did big theatres, and I started to feel like I'd really got my life back together a little bit. And then my manager at the time booked me on a tour with another female songwriter from Scotland, right? And long story short, we hooked up, right? We'd been seeing each other 3 months, and she goes, I'm pregnant. And I'm 27 at this point. I kind of feel like I just got my life, on track again, right? She goes, I'm pregnant, and I think I have to keep it. If it happens, I have to keep it. And I just said to her, cool, okay, I get it. I'm there 100%, right? So I'm 27 years old. And the funny thing was, we were booked on this tour that was 3 months after that. So she was 6 months pregnant, and we were on a tour together, getting to know each other, just, trying to figure out how are we going to do this thing, what's going on. So ultimately we lasted a couple of years. We lasted 2 years together, raising Rosa. And then we made the decision to go separate ways. I wanted to be in the city, she wanted to be in the country. It was just very challenging, honestly, just getting to know each other. So, we split up, and then COVID happened, and it was like, oh man, what do we do now? So we kind of, at that point, got back together to look after Rosa, basically, for a couple months, and then from there on out, we just went our separate ways, and we always did 50-50. I've always had Rosa half the time, she's always been with her mum half the time. And that's something that we've just worked on, and we did things like mediation together to figure out plans, and we worked really hard on creating a schedule and maintaining boundaries, and just doing our best to do things in a healthy way and put Rosa first and keep her happy. And so far so good. Rosa's an incredibly confident, she's the most confident little person I know. And we have an amazing relationship, and that's my biggest achievement. I turned down a lot of big tours when Rosa was little because I just thought I'm never going to be an old man and regret not working more. I'm more likely to regret going away loads and missing out on her childhood. So now I live in Edinburgh, and I'm in a much better place, and really I'm just focused on building my audience. I'm focused on working, I do a lot of work helping people make albums. I do a lot of work just doing gigs closer to home. And gigs have started getting bigger and bigger. So that's exciting. The presence online has started getting bigger and bigger. And my main things that I do these days are gigs, helping people make albums, and also I've got a club, and there's 1,000 of us in there, and I do streams once a month in there, and I share advice and content in there, and that's a little bit about me. So hopefully you got some value out of today. If you did, I'd love to invite you to come and join the club. Thanks for listening to my story, and I hope it's inspired you to find your own persistence, find your own resilience, etc. Have a beautiful Sunday, everyone. I'm off to have lunch with Rosa and my mum and my mum's boyfriend, and I'm going to drink the rest of this Bengal tea. Bengal spice, so good, man. If you do want to join the club and you're watching on Instagram or you're watching on Facebook, just comment club. And if you're watching on YouTube, then click the link in the top comment. If you do want to apply to work with me on a record of your songs, then you can do that. I don't really have much space left in Q1 2026, but I'm starting to book for next year. And I'll catch up with you soon.